stand up to the sit line, to the criminal sit line law. So I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna gas that one on. I just like to present Mike Zint, and then we're gonna hear from Paul Boden, and we'll say a few, not very useful things when he's ready to speak. So, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, my name is Mike Zint. I came to San Francisco about 3 years ago, and even though I have no criminal history, no drug habit, and I don't drink, I was made a criminal immediately by the city for just being poor. The Occupy movement started up a couple of months after I got to town, and I was actually sent to the movement because they profiled me as a drug user to mess up the movement. The police actually sent me to the movement. During the raid at JHP, the police destroyed everything that I owned. Which all these things combined kind of irritate me as a single. On February 28th last year, we took back the 101, 6 people. I came in a few days after the original take back, and we stood up to everything. We took the stealing of our blankets, we took the stealing of our tents, we took the stealing of everything, and we stayed. We suffered through 40-degree temperatures. We had no blankets. We were soaked for weeks at a time, but we refused to budge. When the police were coming at us last year, they were using SIT-LI, they were using 647B, old laws which were not being applied legally. We found this out with Bellstar, a legal assistant who was on the ground with us, and the occupiers all coming together came up with a loophole in the law, which was exception number 4. And exception number 4 says, participating in attending or attending a parade, festival, performance, rally, demonstration, meeting, or similar event conducted on a public sidewalk pursuant to and compliance with a street use or other applicable permit. And you have to understand the Constitution is the permit on this, so you can go without going and paying $300 or $500 for these permits that we're trying to get you to file for. When we presented this to the police, we were immediately excited. The law was ignored. We started recording them, and the cameras were used to back them off, and it did work. For months at a time there, they would stop using the SIT-LI on us. Instead, they would come at us on 637E, which is the illegal lodging law. Now, here is the actual law, and this has been used, Sarah, I believe in the 1880s.
The lodging is actually from the 1880s.
Yeah.
They dusted it off. It's an anti-vagrancy law.
Isn't this California
Yeah,
state
this is the
law?
California state law. This is the law. It says to lodges in any building, structure, vehicle, or place, whether public or private, without the permission of the owner. This is what they used to take down JHP. They took the encampment down in 647E. Now, that was a public park. We were the owners. We had permission. They still did. They cited us and stole our equipment year-long at the 101 using this law. They were using the sleeping bags and blanket stuff as evidence of lodging, even though these were illegally issued citations. They kept our equipment, they kept our blankets, and we still have not gotten it back. They said that DPW lost it. That's not the case. The police department of San Francisco has a policy of creaming the homeless, crushing the homeless. It is being used people are going to be exposed to rainfall this year that has radiation that's so high. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time in San Francisco, but we have monitored with a Geiger counter. It gets so high that it is dangerous. The homeless are going to be exposed to that. You all are going to be exposed to that also. The information is available online if you Google radiation and radioactive rain. Um, this type of thing is just, it's so callous that the city won't allow people to have a simple tent. That tent represents so much more than just shelter from the elements. It gives you your privacy. It gives you the ability to change clothes for storage and lock your tent. We can have it monitored. If we can come together as a community, as Occupy, we can actually set up the sustainable tent city that the homeless deserve. We can take a load off the city. The city is not capable of dealing with the problem. And the situation in the shelters is horrific. I've been in the shelters twice. I came away twice with lice. That is just too much. There are bed bugs. There are lice. There is MRSA. There are men sleeping with women under the guise of being women. There are women complaining about that, saying, oh, there is a guy in bed next to me with a boner. I'm sorry, this is unacceptable type of stuff. The homeless are understanding of this and will not participate in shelters anymore. But they do need an opportunity. If enough people know, then maybe we can get together and give them the opportunity. And our first thing, just to get more media attention since the ASFAT campaign is over, is the Wiener Roast. We need a lot of people there. They're going to try to target the homeless on this law. And I'm sorry, I've been homeless now for 7 years prior to my SSI. The situation in the parks is the homeless protect their section. We don't vandalize. We don't want the heat. We know the cost of income and blame us. So we are very responsible with how we do things. The blocks we park our RV, I'm an RV home. Those blocks don't have broken car windows. The block down the street does because there's nobody going to monitor them. But the homeless still get blamed for these actions. Okay? We need to change the perception of what it is to be homeless. Most of us are not criminals. The drugs, there's a problem with because the longer you're out here, the more you're exposed to it, the more disparaging your life gets. And that is the release. And we have lost repeatedly very good people to the drugs. And this is like from the ASFAT campaign to this, we've lost about half of the people that were there for drug accounts.
And Big Pharma.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. And you guys pay attention to
But the
Obamacare.
rest of us.
They have in Obamacare that you have to take meds that are prescribed or you get fined. That's one of those things that we found out yesterday. So we got to watch this Obamacare.
Forced drugging.
What?
They'll take you out of the program if you don't take your drugs.
Yeah.
And they'll reduce your benefits if you don't take your drugs.
And so is the, I hate to be
Big Pharma.
here, so is the RFID chip, you know, so are all these other horrific things that nobody thinks the government is capable of doing. Guess what, guys? It's not the government, it's corporation. You guys don't matter. Right? You're the ones that are here to fight, but you don't matter in the long run. That's what they think. You're all dead to them. You guys are on the list. Okay? There is a list. For those of you who don't know, there is an anti-government list. We are there. We are occupied. They documented us. I was told at City Hall just recently by the police that I am the leader of the 101. But they know damn well we held it together down there. Me, Rob, and a handful of others, Del Star, Sarah, Dee was there. You were there. I can't remember his name. Ethan, yeah, you were there. Those of us, Rick, recently, you just started showing up, so guess who's got a file? Yeah, right.
I already have one.
And I hate to say it's not. Oh, I already know you're on. You are, Jeff, because you were there. Yeah, so we need to understand the real enemy, and the homeless situation is the threat.
Yeah, am I on the list?
Is
Boy.
the threat of what you will
Good.
become if you don't follow through with the slavery program.
I'll
and
get
the
you on
slavery
the
stuff.
list.
We are also the ones that are fighting it 24/7. The homeless occupiers have accomplished more, and we have called all the actions since January 20th. Every action that Occupy has been involved with, besides the Monsanto March. The occupiers quickly called, quickly put together, and quickly organized through Facebook. We have a Facebook page. I'm going to put it up. I don't know if you guys do the social networking. It's the only way the homeless have to get the word out. We don't have to do Twitter because we're stupid.
Quit on it.
Who needs Twitter?
Give it some space, brother.
Everyone says it's the economy. 90% of their effort is coming into town to stand
Facebook is compartmentalized. You gotta understand that. They are blocking us from getting the word out. When we did the ASAP campaign, they actively attacked my phone, Bell's phone, anybody else. I think there was one more phone on the scene, but I don't see the person here. We got attacked. We could not get the word out. We could not post videos. We could not post pictures. We could not make phone calls. We had to go to the library, and we had to actively reset our phones every time. The NSA is actively attacking every action that we take. So I'm just using the NSA. I'm blaming them. It's something we have to be aware. Big Brother is there. Big Brother is scary, and Big Brother does not leave a dam without any of us. So we have to get together. We have to start unifying. And since the homeless are there on the front lines, they're ready to step up. They just want support. We've only got a couple of people here in the room who are from the Occupy camp. Yes, Trigger is one of the occupiers from the 101 last year. If we can get the homeless lifted up just a little tiny bit emotionally, get them some security, you guys have a sizable force that are willing to go and set up the occupations strategically where they need to be, and they'll be mobile. But I have to call at this point for a reoccupation of the 101. It needs to be done. The 100-year anniversary is coming up for this. Their charter is up. I don't know if the government secretly passed it yet or not. I can't find the information. But we need to draw attention to it, and we need support. The people down there at the waterfront in Embarcadero are being brutally assaulted right now because they know that we're the occupiers. This water truck hit them, and Trigger got video of it the other day. It hit them at 3:30 in the morning. And this is what they're doing to the homeless. If we don't come together as a community, and even fall off, guess who's going to get treated the same way? Right? We don't want to see any more people get hurt out there on the street. We don't want to lose any more friends. I hate losing friends to drugs and alcohol out there on a daily basis. And you guys, I see a lot of new faces that I've seen a little bit. I would love you guys to start spreading the word. Get on the page. Anybody who wants to be admin on the page, I will put on as admin. We want all of them posted. We want everybody coming together and growing our numbers so that we can become that force that we need to be. If we get 1,000 people in front of the mayor's office instead of 20, I guarantee you something's going to change. Thank you.
Yeah, do the questions.
Okay, I think there's any questions. Yeah.
Well, let's,
Stack.
yeah, why don't we take a second, and we usually let the speakers
Second
speak.
Yeah,
speaker.
yeah,
And
that's,
then take
yeah,
a
and then
stack.
you could direct your questions at either one or one.
Or both.
So, Paul,
Whatever you
I'm
guys
gonna let
wanna
you,
do.
I've known Paul for over 30 years,
No, I mean, because my name's Paul Boden. I come up off the streets here, first in New York and then here in San Francisco, a long freaking time ago. I was part of putting together the Homeless Coalition, before that the Homeless Task Force. Really since 1983, been trying to organize around this shit. And about 6 years ago, we started the group where we put out these posters and stuff, called the Western Regional Advocacy Project. And the reason for Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA, Oakland, Sacramento, Fresno, other groups forming the Western Regional Advocacy Project is because we're all up against the same shit. We're all battling for our right to exist. And that's just fucked up. Like, the fact that we have to fight and that we go after Feinstein, that tells you how old I am. Feinstein was the mayor.
Yep,
Feinstein used bulldozers
yep.
to destroy homeless encampments south of Market Street, which is now all yuppie fucking central and all that shit. But back in the day, it was where a lot of us slept. I was homeless from the time I was 16 till I was like 23, 24. And we slept south of Market, where now it's massive, multi-million-dollar condos. And you know, the fact that to our brothers and sisters in Skid Row. We talked to the people in Old Town in Portland. We talked to the people in the Central City area of Seattle. We talked to the people in Oakland. We talked to people in Denver. We talked to people in New York. If anybody here has ever been out to New York, the gentrification and the displacement of poor and homeless people from Manhattan exceeds anything you've ever fucking seen. And back in the day, you would go to Brooklyn or you would go to the Bronx. Now you're out in freaking Queens because the gentrification and the displacement of people just keeps growing. And this isn't, in our opinion, just about those that are actually homeless. It's about public housing. It's about Section 8. It's about rural housing. The USDA 515 program is what funds housing for rural communities that are poor. You know, which went from 30,000 units a year to 312 units last year. I mean, we're talking massive, massive displacement of affordable housing funding for poor people, while the mortgage interest deduction program has gone from $40 billion to $158 billion a year. So if you're trying to buy a fucking house, they'll subsidize the shit out of it. And they'll subsidize it to the tune of $148 billion, I think I said 158, $148 billion a year. But if you're trying to get a place to live, because you're freaking broke, it's $34 billion a year. Right? So we end up out in the freaking street. And who gets hit by that the most? Poor people, especially poor people that are disabled, especially when you're talking about gentrification, poor people of color that are disabled. And then you look at our fucking jails. San Francisco's gone down to 6% of our community is African American. 56% of the people in our local jail at 850 Bryant Street are African American. How can 6% of your community be 56% of your jail population unless you're a racist motherfucker? It just can't happen. You have to admit it. You have to get real about it. And you have to get honest about the fact that when the city says they've improved Union Square, they created such a nice place. When I was homeless, the homeless hotels were on freaking Powell Street. I used to sleep in Union Square. And they removed all those bushes. They removed all that grass specifically because of the fact that we used to sleep there. And now they say, oh, look how beautiful it is. Why? Because the poor people are gone. And you look at this whole plan of closing our parks. You go to Hayward, California. They say they're a magnet for homeless people. I don't know how many of you have ever been homeless, but if you were, did you think, hey, shit, I want to go to Hayward, California? I don't think so. Right? But they want to claim, because first you have to demonize. First you have to dehumanize.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you have to demonize. And then you can criminalize. That's how it goes. So poor people, especially poor people of color that are mentally ill and homeless, they're dangerous. So locking their asses up is no problem. Families that are coming in trying to get a place to sleep for them and their kids, they're expensive. And they're from somewhere else. You know, we're all from somewhere else. And quite frankly, most of the homeless families living in SRO hotels, doubled up, tripled up, that periodically will find themselves in a fucking shelter, actually were born and raised here. The overwhelming majority of them. And they couldn't afford to be here anymore. That's gentrification. That's economic suicide. That's economic cleansing. And that's a community that is clearly saying, we don't want you here anymore. And the reality is that all of the fucking people that went out to the suburbs to get away from the cities got bored of the suburbs. And they're all moving back. And part of their moving back is to get us the fuck out. And the International Downtown Association that supports the business improvement districts that are running our downtown corridors, and don't think for a second that they aren't. The Security and Union Square Park is business improvement district, not city and county. And they run that neighborhood. The security down around the Embarcadero, those ambassadors as they call them and shit with their little jackets.
Red.
The little narcs with their fucking microphones that will come up to a homeless person that is selling a street sheet or panhandling or whatever and say, you can't be here. Now, the street sheet dude can get away with saying, yeah, I can, asshole. I'm not selling advertising, and I didn't pay for the paper. But most of the people that are out there hustling, they don't know that they can stand up to that shit. They have no idea. And they leave. Who the hell are these guys to tell anybody that you can't be in this neighborhood? You can't be on this public sidewalk. You can't be in this public space. This is public. We used to call these spaces neighborhoods. They're now called business improvement districts. That's not semantics. There's a policy behind it. There's a mindset behind it. There's an agenda behind it. And none of us by ourselves are going to fight that. Or at least going to win that fight. We're all going to fight it. But only when we join forces and only when we combine our resources, when we take our skill set, when we take, we use artwork because we feel like, who the fuck wants to hear speeches? Or if I put up 6 papers we've written, who would even look at it? T-shirts, artwork, bumper stickers, the Brass Liberation Orchestra playing at your events, taking over the fucking Union Square and doing a theater thing where we arrested all of the heads of the bid districts. That shit's fun. We need to have parties. More parties, less lectures, less demos. More artwork, more videos, more music. Like, we need to turn this into a kick-ass, peace-driven party because you can't have a violent party and still bring your immigrant friends that may or may not be documented. They are not going to bring their kids or jeopardize their family in order to go to a demo where they're going to end up in jail, where they're going to get deported. So you want to be inclusive. You want to fucking bring your shit together. You want to have a blast. So, April 1st of last year, we did a 17-city right to exist. That's what we called it. And we ended up in New York and New Orleans and LA, and, we got a beautiful collage out of it. And New Orleans, like, the cops have this horrible habit of shooting young black kids. So that was the focus of their demo. But it was still about those kids' right to exist in their community. And what the fuck are you doing to these kids? And in LA, it was about, in Skid Row, they have a thing called Safer Cities Initiative. If you think Gavin Newsom's quality of life crap is brutal, go to LA. Go to Skid Row, where from City Hall to the Staples Center, now that they redid the Staples Center, they are just getting rid of everybody. And this is like a 28-block radius. And they have decided this is Yuppie Row and are just removing people, brutally removing people. And they're using one of the little fact sheets we passed out. They're using loitering, sitting, and number 1, above all else, sleeping. So sleeping, sitting, and standing still are criminal actions. They're criminal offense, and this is not, these people, they are going to jail. They are getting tickets, which then lead to citations when you don't pay the ticket. And they have no right to legal representation over the ticket, so they get prosecuted for not paying the ticket. They are literally sitting in jail over the same shit that is going on here. And the idea of LA Ken and the San Francisco motherfucker, all of us, like trying to create this organization was like, individually, we have to fight. You have to. You can't sit there and say, oh, I'm not gonna fight the local shit, I'm just gonna do this over here. There's no either or. If you're not legitimate enough to stand up and fight for what is happening on your block, in your community, in what you're doing, then you got no right to be a part of a bigger movement. You know, you have to. And in order to connect that, because you're up to your ass in alligators and you're trying to drain the swamp, in order to make that happen, you can't just wait till your organization is rich and shit. You know, you need to have a support system that does the artwork, that makes the posters, that does the t-shirts, that figures out the messaging, that tries to bring some consistent messaging to what we're all saying. Because we are up against a machine called the International Downtown Association. There's a group called New Cities America, based out of San Diego. If that isn't a straight up, and these guys are unabashed. They are actually proud of the fact that they are creating new cities in America. And the #1 security group for business improvement districts across the country is called Block by Block. They ain't hiding the shit. Their agenda is straight up. In Union Square alone, the city and county of San Francisco pays $3 million a year in membership dues. No, I'm sorry, in Civic Center. For publicly owned space, which is a unique concept, I think, depending on how you look at this shit. I think it's fucking unique. But to a business improvement district that then manages and runs Civic Center. They're paying over $400,000 a year at Union Square to a privately run business entity that then runs the gardening, security, and maintenance. 74% goes to security. The rest goes to maintenance and to advertising. But 74% goes to security. They put out a newsletter last December that had an image of a homeless person sleeping in a stairway to the parking lot on one day. And then there was the image, it was a before and after. And then there was an image taken a couple of days later that said, look how good we are. The stairway was empty. Problem solved. Problem fucking solved. He or she, whoever it was that was sleeping there, was gone. Aren't we great? And give us more city money. Give us more property tax dollars, which is supposed to be something decided by all of us, but that's a longer discussion. But give us more property tax dollars, give us more city money. We will make these fucking people disappear. And that'll be good for business, and if it's good for business, it's good for the city. And if it's good for the city and it's good for business, it's good for America, because the neoliberal policies that we used to export to South America and Central America and what became banana republics, which was named after the Chiquita Company because they ran fucking governments down there. It wasn't a misnomer. It wasn't just somebody decided to call it banana republics. It was Chiquita that caused that label. And now we could call them bid republics. And we would call them bid republics at the local level. And it's the same mindset that government is subservient to the needs and the wants and the interests of the business community. And our campaign with the Homeless Bill of Rights is to say, we feel that when you look at the ugly laws, when you look at the Chinese Exclusion Act, when you look at Operation Wetback, when you look at Jim Crow, when you look at anti-opiate laws, when you look at the pattern and practice of local governments using their power, their ability to pass and implement local ordinances that criminalizes the existence of people they don't want in their area, then you have abused your privilege. You have abused your right. And so we're going to take that right away from you. And we're going to remove the time, place, and manner, as they call it, authority of local governments to dictate laws and to use local police to implement those and to enforce those laws. Now, this ain't going to happen freaking overnight. This is not getting a resolution passed. This is not, this is saying that we went back and looked at history, and from 1867, when San Francisco was the first city in the country to pass the ugly laws, which were specifically aimed at disabled panhandlers, and swept across the country to the fact that they weren't overturned finally. The last time it was taken off the books was Chicago in 1972. Now, I'm not saying Chicago enforced it till 72, it just didn't come off the books till then. But in the early 1900s, it was a very popular law to remove disabled people from public spaces. And it said if you are maimed, disabled, and nuisance to the point of being a hindrance, that you could be arrested. And you could be taken to an almshouse, or today you would call them a shelter, or you could be criminalized for those activities. And like today what we see, for years I would talk about this shit, and I would talk about how the 3 largest residential mental health facilities in the United States are local jails, which means chump change misdemeanor fucking offenses. And it was LA County Jail, the Cook County Jail, and Rikers Island. No, actually, it was LA County, Rikers Island, Cook County. Cook County, Chicago. Rikers Island is New York. And then the next one was a residential facility, an actual treatment facility. 2 years ago, it changed. Now Houston is the 4th largest. So an actual treatment hospital became the 5th largest, and Houston County Jail took over as the 4th largest residential mental health facility. So your 4 largest treatment programs for mentally ill people that are indigent are fucking county jails. Not prisons, jail. And it's overwhelmingly quality of life, nuisance enforcement, safer cities initiatives, whatever the fuck they want to call it at the local level. But it's overwhelmingly using sitting, loitering, panhandling, sitting, sleeping, disobeying the sign is an up-and-coming one, because now that they're closing all the parks at night, instead of getting you for sleeping or camping, they can get you for disobeying the sign. And of course, the overwhelming impact of that is going to be on the poorest and the people of color and the people with disabilities. That's where the overwhelmingly shit is going to hit the fan. I mean, if you don't think that racism plays a role in terms of how laws get enforced, even at our level, when I was homeless, I could get away with an open beer. I would dump the shit out. But overwhelmingly, the cops that were giving me shit for having an open beer, and trust me, I had an open beer when I was sleeping hell, I had an open beer today. What the fuck? But, overwhelmingly, they were white too, just like me. And I could get away with that shit. I was emancipated when I was 16 instead of putting the YGC. There's no way in upstate New York with hash and open containers driving a car without a license I wouldn't have been put in fucking YGC if I had been black or Latino. You know, there's just no fucking way. But the judge felt sorry for me, I got emancipated, and all of a sudden at 16, I had the rights of a fucking adult. You know, this shit plays out. And it plays out in LA, it plays out in San Francisco, it plays out in Oakland, it plays out in Berkeley. And so what we're trying to do with our campaign is not overwhelm. A lot of times when I was doing the local organizing shit and groups would come, national groups, statewide groups, whatever, would come, it was like everything they talked to us about was, in addition to all the shit you're doing, we need to have these conference calls, we need to do this, we need to do that. And it was like, fuck you, motherfucker. Like, you know, it just felt really entitled. Like as if we had all this stuff. As if we actually were getting paychecks instead of living off of selling pot and unemployment, you know, like whatever the fuck we were doing. The reality was we didn't have that. We didn't, if we had those resources, you know, we would have been a lot better off. We would have been a lot more effective. Sit-lie would have never passed, you know, if we had those kind of resources. Because if we could have combated the San Francisco Giants were in the World Series when Sit-Lie first got voted on. And they were running advertisements before every Giants game during the little pregame shows in favor of Sit-Lie. So no matter how many street sheets we printed, no matter how many bus shelters we fucked with, no matter how many things we put out, they were hitting 10 times more people than we were able to talk to in one 30-second spot of having some, you know, couple of Gavin Newsom and some other white guy. Or they were using a treatment program in the Western Edition where they had all these homeless guys saying, sit-lie is what we need because otherwise everybody does drugs or whatever. I mean, and they were hitting with one 30-second spot. They were hitting 10 times more people than we could talk to in a year. Because it was right before the World Series game. You know, that's a lot to overcome. And in order for us to overcome that, and that shit plays out in every local community you can think of. That's how the shit plays out. That's the power dynamics of what we're talking about. And to overcome that, we gotta get our shit together. And we have to do our organizing from the perspective of, yeah, we're not all the same. We're gonna do our shit different. That's cool. So long as our goal and our objective and our message is the same, if people hear a consistent message that housing is a human right, not an entitlement, a right, and they hear it in 16 different cities, they might start thinking it's true. If people see a poster, house keys not handcuffs, and they see it in our case, 9 different cities that are all putting this poster up, they might start thinking, wow, I've seen that more than once. You know, because like, think about it, like, you know, how many of us, like if you tell a little kid they're stupid from the time they're a toddler, they're gonna grow up thinking they're stupid. If we can tell people they have rights, that they have dignity, that they're entitled to health care and a living wage and housing and education, that those are entitlements. Those are things that you're worthy of just by virtue of the fact that you were fucking born, regardless of where you were born. Those are human rights. If we can start implanting that into people's mindsets, into people's psyche, and just keep pounding at it, every city they go to, they hear a message that says the human being is worthy of these things. We can start shifting the dialogue. And we can do it without the massive resources of a fucking Giants game on CSN or whatever, or a pre-game show. We can do it by virtue of the fact that we're all over the place. You know, we're in all of our cities. There isn't a city that I know of, or a community that I know of, that doesn't have righteous human rights warriors connected to it. Most of them are broke as fuck. Actually, all of them are broke as fuck. Because, by the way, in case you didn't know, corporate America is not going to fund the revolution. You know? I mean, Gil Scott Heron told us it's not going to be televised. Well, also, it's not going to be funded, which is why it's not going to be televised. But to think that that means they ain't there is asinine. They are there. And it's just a matter of, without overwhelming, without crushing them with process and bullshit, and with coming up with collective tools that we all use, that we all agree on, that is the message we want to put out, we being we, we build that power. Because we build that message, we get it across, we have it in churches, we have it in community forums, we have it on the street. You know, and for RAP, you can't be a part of RAP if you don't do street outreach. And it's got to be documented. You know, there's no self-identified leaders that sit at our fucking table. It's just not going to happen. So we do street outreach to community members that don't necessarily come to our meetings, but that are part of our community. And that's what drives our organizing agenda. And that's why when we did the Homeless Bill of Rights last year, and you know, we'll see what happens next year, it was decriminalization as the Bill of Rights, not anti-discrimination. You know, the rich as well as the poor not being allowed to sleep under bridges don't do shit for the poor. So we did it from the approach of, you cannot criminalize the acts of resting, sleeping, standing, loitering, sleeping in a vehicle, sharing food. And if you got a motherfucker in there prosecuting, the homeless or poor person has to have a representative in there defending. That's just common decency. That's just a fair playing field. And so that became the crux of whether it takes 5 years, 10 years. You know, I think one of the things organizers tend to forget is if you're organizing intergenerational, it's probably not going to happen. You know, like you have to, you know, if you look at the Rockefellers and the DuPonts and the Gates and all them that are around now, their mindset, their foundations are generational. They're not, we want the world and we want it now. That was rich white kids that were trying to end the Vietnam War, and it was bullshit. We're not going to want the world and want it now. We got to build power so that the generations following us have a better chance of equality. And that's everything we've ever gotten, came from other people doing it. And so we need to get rid of the immediate gratification of instant victory today and think about the fact that anti-Okie laws, Jim Crow laws, ugly laws, Operation Wetback laws, all were generational. And if we want to overturn them, and we want to make sure they never come back and bite the next generation in the ass, we're not going to overturn them in the courts. We're going to overturn them legislatively. And we're going to take the power away from local government to say, you can criminalize people you don't want to deal with out of existence. So you don't have to deal with that. And really make that the crux of what our campaign is about. And, you know, if it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it doesn't matter. So long as that's the focus, that's the goal. You know, that's the you know, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. As, you know, we're going to use our experiences of being homeless, getting fucked over, to make sure that that don't happen to people again in the future. So, thank you all very much for your time.